Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey. The Great Invocation. From the locus of light within the mind of God, let illumination radiate into the intellects of men. Let light descend upon the earth. From the locus of love within the heart of God, let love flow outward into the hearts of men. May the Christ return to earth. From the center wherein the will of God is comprehended, let purpose direct the finite wills of men, that selfsame purpose which the masters acknowledge and serve. From the center designated as the human race, let the plan of love and light achieve fruition. And may it hermetically seal the portal wherein iniquity resides. Let light and love and power reestablish the plan on earth. The aforementioned invocation or supplication is not the exclusive possession of any singular individual or collective, but rather pertains to the entirety of humanity. The aesthetic profundity and fortitude of this invocation reside in its inherent lucidity, and in its articulation of specific cardinal verities which all men, innately and inherently, acknowledge. The truth of the existence of a foundational intelligence to whom we vaguely ascribe the appellation of God. The truth that, behind all external semblance, the animating force of the cosmos is love. The truth that a monumental individuality descended to the terrestrial sphere, identified by Christians as the Christ, and incarnated that love to facilitate our comprehension. The truth that both love and intelligence are consequences of that which is designated the will of God. And, finally, the axiomatic truth that only through the agency of humanity itself can the divine plan be realized. Alice Bailey. Chapter 1. Foundations of Esoteric Astrology and the Universal Etheric Medium. The initial observations I must articulate concerning this subject are of a strictly preliminary nature. I seek to establish the foundation for a somewhat novel perspective, a far more esoteric approach to the science of astrology. It is probable that certain assertions I advance will be deemed by the academic and uninspired astrologer as revolutionary, erroneous, improbable, or indemonstrable. Hitherto, however, astrology has not truly vindicated itself within the realms of intellect and science, notwithstanding numerous definitively verifiable triumphs. Consequently, I entreat all who peruse and study this section of a treatise on the 7 rays to retain the aforementioned comments in mind, and to preserve a disposition willing to entertain hypotheses, to weigh theories or suggestions, and to verify conclusions over the span of several years. Should you achieve this, there may arise within you an awakening of the intuition which shall transmute modern astrology into a discipline of genuine moment and global significance. It is intuitional astrology that must eventually supplant what is currently termed astrology, thereby precipitating a return to the wisdom of that ancient science which correlated the constellations with our solar system, directed attention toward the nature of the zodiac, and enlightened humanity regarding the fundamental interrelations that govern and control the phenomenal and subjective worlds. 3 basic statements. It is frequently asserted that astrology constitutes an exact science. However, notwithstanding the multitude of mathematical computations involved, this is far from accurate. Astrology is predicated, curiously enough, upon illusion. For, as you are well aware, the zodiac is naught but the imaginary trajectory of the sun through the heavens, appearing as such from the vantage point of our totally insignificant planet. The sun is not, as stated, situated within any sign of the zodiac. It simply appears to be so positioned as it traverses the space between our diminutive sphere, the Earth, and the constellations at any particular season or time. In antiquity, it was postulated that the Earth constituted the nucleus of the solar system and that the Sun, along with the other planets, revolved around it. This represented the exoteric knowledge and position, though not the esoteric comprehension. Subsequently, as further discoveries illuminated the human mind, our planet was decentralized and the truth was perceived with greater clarity, although much remains as yet undiscovered and may prove to be of an equally revolutionary nature. From certain astrological perspectives, a similar process of decentralization must ensue. The solar system must no longer be viewed as a point around which the zodiac revolves or through which the sun passes in its grand cycle of approximately 25,000 years. Astrologers possessing insight may refute that this is the commonly accepted attitude. Nevertheless, for purposes of clarity and in connection with the general public, the inference is permitted and accepted by the unlearned. Upon this theory concerning the zodiac rests largely that which we term the Great Illusion, and I would have you bear this in mind as you study with me the newer approaches to this greatest and most ancient of all the sciences. Astrology functions as a science that must be reinstated to its primordial beauty and veracity before the world can acquire a truer perspective and a more just and accurate appreciation of the divine plan, as it is expressed at this time through the wisdom of the ages. The second proposition I would submit is that astrology constitutes essentially the purest exposition of occult truth in the world at this time, for it is the science which addresses those conditioning and governing energies and forces that play through and upon the entire field of space and all that is contained within that field. Once this fact is apprehended, and the sources of those energies are better comprehended, and the nature of the field of space is correctly understood, we shall then perceive a horizon that is simultaneously broader and more intimately connected. The relationships between individual, planetary, systemic, and cosmic entities will be grasped, and we shall then commence to live scientifically. It is this scientific mode of living which it is the immediate purpose of astrology to engender. Presently, the stance of the average proponent of astrology is that he constitutes an entity of consequence, at least to himself, that he resides upon that significant planet, the Earth, which is important to humanity, and that, through astrology, he may ascertain his destiny and discern his proper course of action. In offering this commentary, I do not refer to those few astrologers who possess genuine esoteric knowledge. They are indeed few in number, and only a handful are to be found practicing at this time. The contemporary investigator prefers to believe that upon him impinge, and through him flow, all those energies emanating from the sign in which the sun finds itself at the time of his birth. He regards himself also as responsive to the forces of the various planets as they govern the houses in his horoscope, and he believes that his life trends and circumstances are thus determined. This causes him to perceive himself as a factor of isolated importance. Modern interpretations fail to emphasize the significance of the rising sign, the ascendant, and this is attributable to the fact that few are as yet prepared to function as souls. Scant allowance has been made for the energies which play upon our planet continuously from other constellations or from the many concealed planets. Of these, the ageless wisdom asserts the existence of approximately 70 within our solar system. I desire to provide you with a more veracious and precise depiction. This has now become feasible because group awareness, group relations, and group integrity are ascending to the fore in human consciousness. As this occurs, the personality, which is individual, separative, and self-centered, will progressively recede into the background, and the soul, non-separative, group-conscious, and inclusive, will advance increasingly to the forefront. Consequently, interest in the individual horoscope will gradually diminish. Increasingly, the planetary, systemic, and universal picture will become prominent in the awareness of the individual. He will then regard himself solely as an integral component of a far more significant whole, and his world group will interest him far more than himself as an individual. Therefore, I shall not address the subject of esoteric astrology from the perspective of the horoscope whatsoever. Universal relationships, the interplay of energies, the nature of that which lies behind the great illusion, the deluding appearances of things as they exist, and the destiny of our planet, of the kingdoms in nature, and of humanity as a whole, these shall constitute the major portion of our theme. It is of no consequence to me whether modern astrologers validate or repudiate these presented ideas. I shall endeavor to convey certain facts as the hierarchy recognizes them. I shall indicate, if I am able, the subjective realities of which the outer illusion is but the phenomenal appearance, conditioned by men's thoughts throughout the ages. I shall emphasize the fact of the livingness of the sources from which all the energies and forces that play upon our planet flow and emanate. I shall endeavor, above all else, to demonstrate to you that all-pervading unity and that underlying synthesis which forms the basis of all religions and of all the many transmitted forces. I shall seek to remove you, as individuals, from the center of your own stage in consciousness and, without depriving you of individuality and self-identity, show you how you form part of a greater whole of which you may become consciously aware when you function as souls, but of which you are today unconscious, or at least only registering and sensing the inner reality in which you live and move and have your being. This leads me to the third statement, which is so basic and fundamental that I would ask you to pause and contemplate it, notwithstanding that you may not yet grasp its full implications. The ancient wisdom posits that space constitutes a distinct entity. It is with the vitality of this entity and with the forces and energies, the impulses and rhythms, the cycles and the chronological seasons that esoteric astrology occupies itself. Helena Blavatsky articulated this premise within The Secret Doctrine. I would admonish you to recall that there exists an astrological key to the secret doctrine which cannot, as yet, be imparted in its entirety. I may, however, offer certain intimations and propose specific avenues of approach. These, if sustained within the consciousness of illumined astrologers, may subsequently empower one among them to discover that key and, utilizing it on behalf of humanity, unveil the fourth great fundamental of the ageless wisdom, of which three have already been presented in the proem of The Secret Doctrine. Space is an entity, and the entire vault of heaven, as it has been poetically designated, constitutes the phenomenal appearance of that entity. You will observe that I did not specify the material appearance, but rather the phenomenal appearance. Speculation regarding the nature, history, and identity of that entity is futile and devoid of value. A faint conception, offering an analogy even whilst eluding precise specifications, might be acquired should you endeavor to conceive of the human family, the fourth kingdom in nature, as an entity constituting a single unit, expressing itself through the manifold and diversified forms of man. You, as an individual, function as an integral component of humanity, yet you pursue your own existence, react to your personal impressions, and respond to exterior influences and impacts. In turn, you emanate influences, project a form of character radiation, and express specific qualities. You thereby, and in some measure, affect your environment and those with whom you come into contact. Yet, throughout, you remain part of a phenomenal entity to which we assign the name humanity. Now, extend this concept to a greater phenomenal entity, the solar system. This entity is itself an integral portion of a still greater life which expresses itself through 7 solar systems, of which ours is but one. If you can apprehend this concept, a vague representation of a profound underlying esoteric truth will emerge within your consciousness. It is the life and influence, the radiations and emanations of this entity, and their combined effect upon our planetary life, the kingdoms in nature, and the unfolding human civilizations which we must briefly consider. The subject is so vast that I have been confronted with the dilemma of determining the optimal method for its treatment. I determined upon brevity, the concise statement of facts to those of us laboring on the inner side of life, but which must rightfully remain mere hypotheses to you, and the avoidance of detail and elaborate discussion. We shall endeavor to proceed from the universal to the particular and from the general to the specific. However, our emphasis shall invariably remain upon the universal and the general, rather than upon the particular and the specific. It will devolve upon those among you who are students of astrology to make due application of the truth to the specific. It is definitively in this connection that modern astrology has gone astray. It has reversed the true and correct procedure, placing emphasis upon the specific and particular, upon the personal horoscope and individual destiny, whilst neglecting to emphasize the great energies and their source. These sources are ultimately responsible for the manifestation of the specific. This stance and presentation of truth must be amended. In esoteric astrology, we are, therefore, concerned with the life and lives that inform the points of light within the universal life. Constellations, solar systems, planets, kingdoms in nature, and microscopic man are all the result of the activity and the manifestation of energy of certain lives, whose cycle of expression and whose infinite purposes lie beyond the comprehension of the most advanced and illumined minds on our planet. The subsequent point for each of you to apprehend is the fact that the ether of space constitutes the field in and through which the energies from the many originating sources operate. We are, therefore, concerned with the etheric body of the planet, of the solar system, and of the 7 solar systems of which our system is one, as well as with the general and vaster etheric body of the universe in which we are located. I employ the word located here with deliberation and because of the inferences to which it leads. This vaster field, as well as the smaller and more localized fields, provides the medium of transmission for all the energies that play upon and through our solar system, our planetary spheres, and all forms of life upon those spheres. It forms one unbroken field of activity in constant, ceaseless motion, an eternal medium for the exchange and transmission of energies. In connection with this, and in order to understand more correctly, it will be advantageous to study individual man. In this manner, we may arrive at a faint comprehension of the basic and underlying truth. Students should never overlook the law of analogy as an interpretive agency. Esotericism teaches, and modern science is rapidly arriving at the same conclusion, that underlying the physical body and its comprehensive and intricate system of nerves is a vital or etheric body, which acts as the counterpart and the true form of the outer and tangible phenomenal aspect. It is likewise the medium for the transmission of force to all parts of the human frame and the agent of the indwelling life and consciousness. It determines and conditions the physical body, for it is itself the repository and the transmitter of energy from the various subjective aspects of man, and also from the environment in which man, both the inner and outer man, finds himself. 2 additional points should here be appended. First, the individual etheric body is not an isolated and separated human vehicle, but is, in a peculiar sense, an integral part of the etheric body of that entity which we have designated the human family. This kingdom in nature, through its etheric body, is an integral part of the planetary etheric body. The planetary etheric body is not separated from the etheric bodies of other planets, but all of them in their totality, along with the etheric body of the Sun, constitute the etheric body of the solar system. This is related to the etheric bodies of the 6 solar systems which, with ours, form a cosmic unity, and into these pour energies and forces from certain great constellations. The field of space is etheric in nature, and its vital body is composed of the totality of the etheric bodies of all constellations, solar systems, and planets found therein. Throughout this cosmic golden web, there exists a constant circulation of energies and forces, and this constitutes the scientific basis of astrological theories. Just as the forces of the planet and of the inner spiritual man, to mention only one factor among many, pour through the etheric body of the individual man upon the physical plane, conditioning his outer expression, activities, and qualities, so too do the varying forces of the universe pour through every part of the etheric body of that entity we call space, thereby conditioning and determining the outer expression, activities, and qualities of every form found within the cosmic periphery. The second point I would submit is that, within the human etheric body, there are to be found 7 major force centers which are in the nature of distributing agencies and electrical batteries, providing dynamic force and qualitative energy to the man. They produce definite effects upon his outer physical manifestation. Through their constant activity, his quality appears, his ray tendencies begin to emerge, and his point in evolution is clearly indicated. This control of form through a septenate of energies, as it is defined in the old commentary, is an unalterable rule in the inner governance of our universe and of our particular solar system, as well as in the case of individual man. By way of illustration, there exist within our solar system 7 sacred planets which bear correspondence to the 7 individual force centers in man, the 7 solar systems of which our own counts as one, and subsequently the 7 energy centers of that entity to whom I have alluded in my previous works as the one about whom naught can be said. A substantial volume of knowledge has been disseminated within occult literature, regarding which the average astrologer remains profoundly unapprised. It is imperative that he learns to conceptualize in terms of larger wholes and concerns himself more deeply with the emanating sources and the eternal, persistent causes, rather than with the effects of these sources upon that ephemeral creation, a human being, and his transient existence upon a notably insignificant planet. As he endeavors to achieve this, he shall discern for himself the evidences of man's essential divinity, a divinity discoverable within the infinite reach of man's consciousness when illuminated by the light of the soul, and in his capacity to project his thought into the consciousness of those manifold lives whose energetic movements he must perforce share, inasmuch as his diminutive modicum of energy constitutes an integral portion of theirs. There exists one specific aspect of energy for which the contemporary astrologer accords scant consideration, yet it remains of paramount significance. This refers to the energy which emanates from, or radiates out of, the earth itself, residing as all human beings do upon the terrestrial surface and being, consequently, projected into the etheric body of the planet. By virtue of the fact that man maintains an erect posture, the human form is perpetually immersed in the emanations and radiations of our earth, as well as in the integral quality of our planetary logos as he transmits and disperses energy within his planetary environment. Astrologers have historically emphasized the incoming influences and energies as they impinge upon and permeate our minor planet, yet they have neglected to take into adequate consideration the emanating qualities and forces which constitute the contribution of our Earth's etheric body to the greater whole. We shall address this subject subsequently, yet I deemed it necessary to direct your attention to it at this juncture. A further point deserving of notation is that the influence of the moon is purely symbolic in nature and effect. It is merely the consequence of ancient thought and doctrine, descended to us from the Lemurian era, and is not founded upon any genuine radiation or influence. In those remote epochs, antedating even Lemuria and constituting in Lemurian days merely an ancient tradition, the moon appeared to be a living, vital entity. However, I would have you bear distinctly in mind that today the moon acts as nothing more than a dead form. It possesses no emanation and no radiation of any description, and consequently exercises no effect whatsoever. The moon, from the perspective of the esoteric knower, is merely an obstruction in space, an undesirable form destined to eventually disappear. Within esoteric astrology, the effect of the moon is identified as a thought effect and as the result of a potent and most ancient thought form. Nevertheless, the moon possesses no intrinsic quality and can transmit nothing to the earth. Permit me to reiterate, the moon is a dead form. It possesses no emanation whatsoever. It is for this reason that the moon is described in the ancient teachings as veiling either Vulcan or Uranus. This hint or inference has ever been present, and astrologers would be well advised to experiment with this suggestion I have proffered anent the moon. Rather than working with the moon, let them utilize Vulcan when dealing with the undeveloped or average man, and Uranus when considering the highly developed man. They would observe interesting and convincing results eventuating therefrom. Students would also be prudent to recall that the 12 constellations which constitute our particular zodiac are themselves the recipients of manifold streams of energy flowing to them from diverse sources. These streams blend and fuse with the energy of any specific constellation and, having been transmuted and occultly refined, eventually find their way into our solar system. I wish to draw attention, at this juncture, to certain observations I made in a treatise on cosmic fire which are apposite and beneficial. I am here paraphrasing to a degree. Astrology pertains to the effect produced within the substance of the sheaths by the influences, vibrations, etc. of the various planets. These act esoterically as the influences of the solar centers. The forces emanating from the solar centers play upon the planetary centers. This mystery is concealed within the karma of the heavenly man. When true esoteric astrology comes into existence, further information anent this matter will be imparted. Astrological students today are acquiring merely the rudiments of this stupendous subject and are occupied with the exoteric fringes of that great veil which has been wisely cast over planetary lore. A treatise on cosmic fire. The following constitutes a list, incomplete yet adequate for our present purposes, of the major influences which traverse from far distant sources into our planetary life, producing definite effects upon individual man and humanity as a whole. 1. The constellation of the Great Bear. 2. The Seven Sisters of the Pleiades. 3. Sirius, the Dog Star. 4. The seven solar systems of which ours is one. 5. The seven sacred planets of which ours is not one. 6. The 5 non-sacred planets or hidden planets. 7. The 7 planetary centers. 8. The 7 centers of force in the human etheric body. 9. The 12 zodiacal constellations. We possess, therefore, a 9-fold energy impact. This represents a major chart, yet it must be remembered that there exist other impacts of relative insignificance. To these must be added other streams of energy which definitely impinge upon and affect our planetary life, such as those originating from that great star, Betelgeuse, or from Antares, and other colossal suns and solar systems which are related to the constellations of the zodiac, and whose force reaches us through the medium of these constellations rather than directly. Furthermore, it should be recalled that do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.